If you have watched The Princess Bride, the movie, as many times as I have, and seen in the opening credits, novel by William Goldman, as well as a movie, and you've thought, I have to read this book, then you're just like me, and you have to read this book because it's hilarious. If you like the movie, you're going to love the book. So this is called The Princess Bride, S. Morgan Stern's classic tale of true love and high adventure by William Goldman. This book is hilarious. And like I said, if you like the movie, you're going to love the book. And I marked a ton of passages that I would like to read to you, but I realized after marking all of these, I thought that's going to ruin some of reading the book. So I'm just going to read a couple of them and leave it to you to read it because it's hilarious and I highly recommend it. So the first passage I want to read is on page 99, and it's talking about how perfect Buttercup is. Wherever she went, the people parted. She crossed and recrossed the great square, and always ahead of her, the people swept apart to let her pass. Buttercup continued, moving slowly and smiling, alone like some land messiah. Most of the people there would never forget that day. None of them, of course, had ever been so close to perfection, and the great majority adored her instantly. There were, to be sure, some who, while admitting she was pleasing enough, were withholding judgment as to her quality as a queen. And of course, there were some more who were frankly jealous. Very few of them hated her. And only 3 of them were planning to murder her. The humor in this is just, it's so funny. I just love it. You have to read it. I promise. You're going to love it. This passage is on page 107. So in the movie, it is very large eels that are attacking the princess when they're on the ship trying to get to the Cliffs of Insanity. But in the book, it's actually sharks. She does not get eaten by the sharks at this time, my father said. I looked up at him. What? You looked like you were getting too involved and bothered, so I thought I would let you relax. Oh, for Pete's sake, I said. You'd think I was a baby or something. What kind of stuff is that? I really sounded put out, but I'll tell you the truth. I was getting a little too involved, and I was glad he told me. I mean, when you're a kid, you don't think, well, since the book's called The Princess Bride, and since we're barely into it, obviously the author is not about to make shark kibble of his leading lady. You get hooked on things when you're a youngster, so to any youngsters reading, I'll simply repeat my father's words since they work to soothe me. She does not get eaten by the sharks at this time. So one of the things that's so funny about this book is the author is pretending to, edit the original version of Princess Bride. So there's a lot of sides. I'll show you. It's this cute little italicized print. So that was his dad talking to him when he read it as a kid. And he fell in love with it as a child. And then he gets the opportunity to edit it as an adult to condense it and change the book a little bit. Anyway, so the sides like that are so funny because he has all kinds of silly things that he adds to it. This is on page 109. My plan was ideal, as all my plans are ideal. It was the moon's ill timing that robbed me of perfection. He scowled unforgivingly at the yellow wedge above them. Then he stared ahead. There, the Sicilian pointed, the Cliffs of Insanity! And there they were, rising straight and sheer from the water, 1,000 feet into the night. They provided the most direct route between Florin and Gilder, but no one ever used them, sailing instead the long way, many miles around. Not that the cliffs were impossible to scale. 2 men were known to have climbed them in the last century alone. Sail straight for the steepest part, the Sicilian commanded. The Spaniard said, I was. Buttercup did not understand. Going up the cliffs could hardly be done, she thought, and no one had ever mentioned secret passages through them. Yet here they were, sailing closer and closer to the mighty rocks, now surely less than a quarter mile away. For the first time, the Sicilian allowed himself a smile. All is well. I was afraid your little jaunt in the water was going to cost me too much time. I had allowed an hour of safety. There must still be 50 minutes of it left. We're miles ahead of anybody, and safe, safe, safe. No one could be following us yet? The Spaniard asked. No one, the Sicilian assured him. It would be inconceivable. Absolutely inconceivable? Absolutely, totally, and in all other ways inconceivable, the Sicilian reassured him. Why do you ask? No reason, the Spaniard replied. It's only that I just happened to look back and something's there. They all whirled. Something was indeed there. Less than a mile behind them, across the moonlight, was another sailing boat, small, painted what looked like black, with a giant sail that billowed black in the night, and a single man at the tiller. A man in black. The Spaniard looked at the Sicilian. It must just be some local fisherman out for a pleasure cruise alone at night through shark-infested waters. That was one of the things I loved about the book. It's direct lines from the book in the movie. So if you can quote Princess Bride, it's really fun to read it. There is probably a more logical explanation, the Sicilian said, but since no one in Gilder could know yet what we've done, and no one in Florin could have gotten here so quickly, he is definitely not. However, much it may look like it following us. It is coincidence and nothing more. He's gaining on us, the Turk said. That is also inconceivable, the Sicilian said. Before I stole this boat we're in, I made many inquiries as to what was the fastest ship on all of Florin Channel, and everyone agreed it was this one. You're right, the Turk agreed. The Turk is Fezzik, for those of you who are wondering. He isn't gaining on us, he's just getting closer, that's all. It is the angle we're looking from, and nothing more, said the Sicilian. Buttercup could not take her eyes from the great black sail. Surely the three men she was with frightened her. But somehow, for reasons she could never begin to explain, the man in black frightened her more. All right, look sharp, the Sicilian said then, just a drop of edginess in his voice. The cliffs of insanity were very close now. The Spaniard maneuvered the craft expertly, which was not easy. And the waves were rolling in toward the rocks now, and the spray was blinding. Buttercup shielded her eyes and put her head straight back, staring up into the darkness toward the top, which seemed shrouded and out of reach. Then the humpback bounded forward, and as the ship reached the cliff face, he jumped up, and suddenly there was a rope in his hand. Buttercup stared in silent astonishment. The rope, thick and strong, seemed to travel all the way up the cliffs. As she watched, the Sicilian pulled at the rope again and again, and it held firm. It was attached to something at the top, a giant rock, a towering tree, something. Fast now, the Sicilian ordered. If he is following us, which of course is not within the realm of human experience, but if he is, we've got to reach the top and cut the rope off before he can climb up after us. Climb? Buttercup said. I would never be able to. Hush, the Sicilian ordered her. Get ready, he ordered the Spaniard. Sink it, he ordered the Turk. And then everyone got busy. The Spaniard took a rope, tied Buttercup's hands and feet. The Turk raised a great leg and stomped down at the center of the boat, which gave way immediately and began to sink. Then the Turk went to the rope and took it in his hands. Load me, the Turk said. The Spaniard lifted Buttercup and draped her body around the Turk's shoulders. Then he tied himself to the Turk's waist. Then the Sicilian hopped, clung to the Turk's neck. All aboard, the Sicilian said. This was before trains, but the expression comes originally from carpenters loading lumber, and this was well after carpenters. That's one of the sides. I'm telling you guys, you got to read it. It's hilarious. Okay, this is when the man in black is climbing up the cliffs. This is on page 119. 250 feet below him now, the man in black continued his painful climb. Inigo lay flat, staring down, trying to pierce the moonlight and find the climber's secret. For a long while, Inigo did not move. He was a good learner, but not a particularly fast one, and so he had to study. Finally, he realized that somehow, by some mystery, the man in black was making fists and jamming them into the rocks and using them for support. Then he would reach up with his other hand until he found a high split in the rock and make another fist and jam it in. Whenever he could find support for his feet, he would use it, but mostly it was the jammed fists that made the climbing possible. Inigo marveled. What a truly extraordinary adventurer this man in black must be. He was close enough now for Inigo to realize that the man was masked, a black hood covering all but his features. Another outlaw, perhaps? Then why should they have to fight, and for what? Inigo shook his head. It was a shame that such a fellow must die, but he had his orders, so there it was. Sometimes he did not like the Sicilian's commands, but what could he do? Without the brains of the Sicilian, he, Inigo, would never be able to command jobs of this caliber. The Sicilian was a master planner. Inigo was a creature of the moment. The Sicilian said, kill him. So why waste sympathy on the man in black? Someday someone would kill Inigo, and the world would not stop to mourn. This is on page 132, and it's when Inigo, there's a lot more behind the scenes of the characters in the book, and this is talking about Inigo after his father was killed by the six-fingered man. Coward, the nobleman whirled. Pig! Again the crowd parted. Inigo stood there, holding the six-fingered sword, repeating his words. Coward, pig, killer. Someone tend the babe before he oversteps himself, the noble said to the crowd. Inigo ran forward then, standing in front of the nobleman's horse, blocking the nobleman's path. He raised the six-fingered sword with both his hands and cried, I, Inigo Montoya, do challenge you, coward, pig, killer, fool, to battle. Get him out of my way. Move the infant. The infant is 10, and he stays, Inigo said. Enough of your family is dead for one day. He be content, said the noble. When you beg me for your breath, then I shall be contented. Now dismount. The nobleman dismounted. Draw your sword. The nobleman unsheathed his killing weapon. I dedicate your death to my father, Inigo said. Begin. They began. It was no match, of course. Inigo was disarmed in less than a minute. But for the first 15 seconds or so, the noble was uneasy. During those 15 seconds, strange thoughts crossed his mind. For even at the age of 10, Inigo's genius was there. Disarmed, Inigo stood very straight. He said not a word, begged nothing. I'm not going to kill you, the nobleman said, because you have talent and you're brave. You're also lacking in manners, and that's going to get you in trouble if you're not careful. So I shall help you as you go through life by leaving you with a reminder that bad manners are to be avoided. And with that, his blade flashed 2 times on his cheek. So Inigo always had that reminder about his dad dying, and he tried to stand up for his death. This is on page 136, talking again a little bit more about Inigo, how he came to know the Sicilian and got in cahoots with him. Well, Inigo began. 10 years is what? About 3,600 days? And that's about, I figured this out once, so I remember pretty well, about 86,000 hours. Well, I always made it a point to get 4 hours sleep per night. That's 14,000 hours right there, leaving me perhaps 72,000 hours to account for. You slept. I'm with you. What else? Well, I squeezed rocks. So Inigo's talking about how he became the amazing fighter or swordsman that he is. I'm sorry, my hearing sometimes fails me. It sounded like you said you squeezed rocks to make my wrist strong so I could control the sword. Rocks like apples, that size. I would squeeze them in each hand for perhaps 2 hours a day, and I would spend another 2 hours a day in skipping and dodging and moving quickly so that my feet would be able to get me into position to deliver properly the thrust of the sword. That's another 14,000 hours. I'm down to 58,000 now. Well, I always sprinted 2 hours each day as fast as I could, so my legs, as well as being quick, would also be strong, and that gets me down to about 50,000 hours. Yesty. So Inigo went all over the place trying to figure out people who could teach him how to be an awesome swordsman, and Yesty is the person he went to teach him. Yesty examined the young man before him, blade thin, 6 feet in height, straight as a sapling, bright-eyed, taut, even motionless. He seemed whippet quick. And these last 50,000 hours, these have been spent studying the sword? Inigo nodded. Where? Wherever I could find a master. Venice, Bruges, Budapest. I could have taught you here. True, but you care for me. You would not have been ruthless. You would have said, excellent parry, Inigo. Now that's enough for one day. Let's have supper. That does sound like me, Yesty admitted. But why was it so important? Why was it worth so much of your life? Because I could not fail him again. Fail who? My father. I have spent all these years preparing to find the six-fingered man and kill him in a duel. But he is a master, Yesty. He said as much as, and I saw the way his sword flew at Domingo. I must not lose that duel when I find him. So now I have come to you. You know swords and swordsmen. You must not lie. Am I ready? If you say I am, I will seek him through the world. If you say no, I will spend another 10 years and another 10 after that, if that is needed. I really liked the behind the scenes of the characters in the book, going into more depth about them. And Inigo's story is actually really cool. Okay, so this is after he's talked to Yesty, and Yesty's trying to figure out if he's ready. I'll tell you the truth, and it's up to you to live with it. This is Yesty speaking. First, there has never been a master as young as you. 30 years at least before that rank has yet been reached, and you are barely 22. Well, the truth is you are an impetuous boy driven by madness, and you are not now, and you will never be a master. Thank you for your honesty, Inigo said. I must tell you I had hoped for better news. I find it very hard to speak just now, so if you'll please excuse me, I'll be on my... I had not finished, Yesti said. What else is there to say? I loved your father very dearly. That you know. But this you did not know. When we were very young, not yet 20, we saw, with our own eyes, an exhibition by the Corsican wizard Bastia. I know of no wizards. It is the rank beyond master in swordsmanship, Yesti said. Bastia was the last man so designated. Long before your birth, he died at sea. There have been no wizards since, and you would never in this world have beaten him. But I tell you this, he would never in this world have beaten you. Inigo stood silent for a long time. I'm ready then? I would not enjoy being the six-fingered man, was all Yesti replied. The next morning, Inigo began the track down. He had it all carefully prepared in his mind. He would find the six-fingered man. He would go up to him. He would say simply, Hello, my name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die. And then, then the duel. It was a lovely plan, really. Simple, direct, no frills. In the beginning, Inigo had all kinds of wild vengeance notions, but gradually, simplicity had seemed the better way. Originally, he had all kinds of little plays worked out in his mind. The enemy would weep and beg. The enemy would cringe and cry. The enemy would bribe and slobber and act in every way unmanly. But eventually, these too gave way in his mind to simplicity. The enemy would simply say, Oh yes, I remember killing him. I'll be only too delighted to kill you too. Inigo had only one problem. He could not find the enemy. Couldn't find the six-fingered man. Okay, this is on page 140. And this is, I have to look at my notes. Oh, so this is when the Sicilian finds him. This is how Inigo gets connected to him. By then, he knew what had happened. 10 years learning was 10 years too long. Too much had been allowed to happen. The six-fingered man was probably crusading in Asia, or getting rich in America, or a hermit in the East Indies, or dead? Inigo, at the age of 27, began having a few extra glasses of wine at night to help him get to sleep. At 28, he was having a few extra glasses to help him digest his lunch. At 29, the wine was essential to wake him in the morning. His world was collapsing around him. Not only was he living in daily failure, something almost as dreadful was beginning to happen. Fencing was beginning to bore him. He was simply too good. He would make his living during his travels by finding the local champion wherever he happened to be, and they would duel. And Inigo would disarm him and accept whatever they happened to bet. And with his winnings, he would pay for his food and his lodging and his wine. But the local champions were nothing. Even in the big cities, the local experts were nothing. Even in the capital cities, the local masters were nothing. There was no competition, nothing to help him keep an edge. His life began to seem pointless. His quest pointless, everything without reason. At 30, he gave up the ghost. He stopped his search, forgot to eat, slept only on occasion. He had his wine for company, and that was enough. He was a shell. The greatest fencing machine since the Corsican wizard was barely even practicing the sword. He was in that condition when the Sicilian found him. So he was just the lowest of the low, and then the Sicilian found him, and that's how he was able to use him for his swordsmanship, and physic was huge. Okay, this is when, so it kind of goes back and forth between the past, between the present, and this is back to when the man in black and Inigo are talking. It's on page 145. Why have you followed us? You carry baggage of much value. We have no intention of selling, Inigo said. That is your business. And yours? The man in black made no reply. Inigo stood and walked away, surveying the terrain over which they would battle. It was a splendid plateau, really filled with trees for dodging around, and roots for tripping over, and small rocks for losing your balance on, and boulders for leaping off if you could climb on them fast enough, and bathing everything. The entire spot, moonlight. One could not ask for a more suitable testing ground for a duel, Inigo decided. It had everything, including the marvelous cliffs at one end, beyond which was the wonderful 1,000-foot drop, always something to bear in mind when one was planning tactics. It was perfect. The place was perfect. Provided the man in black could fence. Really fence. Inigo did then what he always did before a duel. He took the great sword from its scabbard and touched the side of the blade to his face 2 times, once along one scar once along the other. Then he examined the man in black. A fine sailor, yes, a mighty climber, no question. Courageous, without a doubt. But could he fence? Really fence? Please, Inigo thought, it has been so long since I have been tested. Let this man test me. Let him be a glorious swordsman. Let him be both quick and fast, smart and strong. Give him a matchless mind for tactics, a background the equal of mine. Please, please, it's been so long. Let him be a master. I have my breath back now, the man in black said from the rock. Thank you for allowing me to my rest. We'd best get on with it then, Inigo replied. The man in black stood. You seem a decent fellow, Inigo said. I hate to kill you. You seem a decent fellow, answered the man in black. I hate to die. Does that sound familiar? It is really fun reading the direct lines. Okay, this is on page 150. This is towards the end of their fight. The death moment was at hand now. Again and again, Inigo thrust forward, and again, the man in black managed to ward off the attacks, but each time it was harder, and the strength in Inigo's wrists was endless, and he only thrust the more fiercely, and soon the man in black grew weak. You cannot tell it, he said then, because I wear a cape and mask, but I am smiling now. Why? Because I'm not left-handed either, said the man in black, and he too switched hands, and now the battle was finally joined, and Inigo began to retreat. Who are you? He screamed. No one of import, another lover of the blade. I must know. Get used to disappointment. They flashed along the open plateau now, and the blades were both invisible, but oh, the earth trembled, and oh, the sky shook, and Inigo was losing. He tried to make for the trees, but the man in black would have none of it. He tried retreating to the boulders, but that was denied him too. And in the open, unthinkable as it was, the man in black was superior. Not much, but in a multitude of tiny ways, he was of a slightly higher quality. A hair quicker, a fraction stronger, a speck faster. Not really much at all. But it was enough. They met in the center plateau for the final assault. Neither man conceded anything. The sound of metal, clashing metal, rose. A final burst of energy flew through Inigo's veins, and he made every attempt, tried every trick, used every hour of every day of his years of existence. But he was blocked. By the man in black. He was shackled by the man in black. He was baffled, thwarted, muzzled, beaten by the man in black. So as amazing as Inigo was, the man in black was just a little bit better. Okay, this is some of physics background. This is on page 155. Turkish women are famous for the size of their babies. The only happy newborn ever to weigh over 24 pounds upon entrance was the product of a southern Turkish union. Turkish hospital records list a total of 11 children who weighed over 20 pounds at birth, and 25 more who weighed between 50 and 20. Now, all of these 106 cherubs did what babies usually do at birth. They lost 3 or 4 ounces, and it took them the better part of a week before they got it totally back. More accurately, 105 of them lost weight just after they were born. Not Fezzik. His first afternoon, he gained a pound. Since he weighed but 15, and since his mother gave birth 2 weeks early, the doctors weren't unduly concerned. It's because you came 2 weeks too soon, they explained to Fezzik's mother. That explains it. Actually, of course, it didn't explain anything, but whenever doctors are confused about something, which is really more frequently than any of us would do well to think about, they always snatch at something in the vicinity of the case and add, that explains it. Does that sound familiar? If Fezzik's mother had come late, they would have said, well, you came late. That explains it. Or, well, it was raining during delivery. This added weight is simply moisture. That explains it. A healthy baby doubles his birth weight in about 6 months and triples it in a year. When Fezzik's was a year, he weighed 85 pounds. He wasn't fat, understand. He looked like a perfectly normal, strong 85-pound kid. Not all that normal, actually. He was pretty hairy for a 1-year-old. By the time he reached kindergarten, he was ready to shave. He was the size of a normal man by this time, and all the other children made his life miserable. At first, naturally, they were scared to death. Even then, Fezzik looked fierce. But once they found out he was chicken, well, they weren't about to let any opportunity like that get away. Okay, Fezzik's parents were actually awesome. They loved him a lot. And his dad really wanted to teach him how to defend himself because, like I just read, he was kind of a chicken. He was huge, but he was a chicken and he didn't want to fight. So this is a little background as to how he became a really good fighter. On page 159. He's a natural learner, his mother said. She cared for him as greatly as his father did. Now hit me, Fezzik's father said. No, I don't want to do that. Hit your father, Fezzik. Maybe he doesn't know how to hit, Fezzik's father said. Maybe not, Fezzik's mother shook her head sadly. Watch, honey, Fezzik's father said. See? Simple. You just make a fist, like you already know, and then pull your arm back a little and aim for where you want to land and let go. Show your father what a natural learner you are, Fezzik's mother said. Make a punch. Hit him a good one. Fezzik made a punch towards his father's arm. Fezzik's father stared at the heavens again in frustration. Ugh. He came close to your arm, Fezzik's mother said quickly, before her son's face could cloud. That was very good for a start, Fezzik. Tell him what a good start he made, she said to her husband. It was in the right direction, Fezzik's father managed. If only I'd been standing 1 yard further west, it would have been perfect. I'm very tired, Fezzik said. When you learn so much so fast, you get so tired. I do anyway. Please, may I be excused? Not yet, Fezzik's mother said. Honey, please hit me. Really hit me. Try. You're a smart boy. Hit me a good one, Fezzik's father begged. Tomorrow, Daddy, I promise. Tears began to form. Crying's not going to work, Fezzik, his father exploded. It's not going to work on me, and it's not going to work on your mother. You're going to do it. You're going to do what I say, and what I say is you're going to hit me, and if it takes all night, you're going to stand right here, and if it takes all week, we're going to stand right here, and if it... Splat! This was before emergency wards, and that was too bad, at least for Fezzik's father, because there was no place to take him after Fezzik's punch landed, except to his own bed, where he remained with his eyes shut for a day and a half, except for when the milkman came to fix his broken jaw. This was not before doctors, but in Turkey they hadn't gotten around to claiming the bone business yet. Milkmen were still in charge of bones, the logic being that since milk was so good for bones, who would know more about broken bones than a milkman? When Fezzik's father was able to open his eyes as much as he wanted, they had a family talk, the three of them. Oh my gosh, the Fezzik scenes are really funny. I enjoyed reading about his parents and how he came to be a fighter and what he was doing. Okay. So I'm going to skip a bunch of these because it's just too funny and you guys got to read it on your own. So I'm going to skip ahead. This is to page 338. I'm passing probably, 20 of my little markers. So 338. This is when the wedding is happening and Prince Humperdinck is kind of going bananas. So the wedding itself did not end until 5:31, and Humperdinck had to use all of his persuasive abilities to get even that much accomplished. As the screaming from outside the gate burst all bounds of propriety, the prince interrupted the Archdeacon with gentlest manner and said, Holiness, my love is simply overpowering my ability to wait. Please skip on down to the end of the service. The time was then 5:27. Humperdinck and Buttercup, the Archdeacon said, I am very old, and my thoughts on marriage are few, but I feel I must give them to you on this most happy of days. The Archdeacon could hear absolutely nothing, and had been so afflicted since he was 85 or so. The only actual change that had come over him in the past years was that, for some reason, his impediment had gotten worse. Marriage, he said. Very old. Unless you paid strict attention to his title and past accomplishments, it was very hard to take him seriously. Marriage, the Archdeacon began. Again, Holiness, I interrupt you in the name of love. Please hurry along as best you can to the end. Marriage is a dream within a dream. Buttercup was paying little attention to the goings-on. Wesley must be racing down the corridors now. He always ran so beautifully. Even back on the farm, long before she knew her heart, it was good to watch him run. Count Rugen was the only other person in the room, and the commotion at the gate had him on edge. Outside the door he had his 4 best swordsmen, so no one could enter the tiny chapel. But still, there were a lot of people screaming where the brute's god should have been. The 4 guards were the only ones left inside the castle, for the prince needed no spectators to the events that were soon to happen. If only the idiot cleric would speed things along. It was already 5:29. The dream of love wrapped within the greater dream of everlasting west. Eternity is off wind, remember that. The love woo forever. It was 5:30 when the prince stood up and approached the Archdeacon firmly. Man and a wife, he shouted. Man and a wife! Say that! I'm not there yet, the Archdeacon answered. You just arrived, the prince replied. Now. Buttercup could picture Wesley rounding the final corner. There were 4 guards waiting outside. At 10 seconds per guard, she began figuring, but then stopped because numbers had always been her enemy. She looked down at her hands. Oh, I hope he still thinks I'm pretty, she thought. Those nightmares took a lot out of me. Man and wife, your man and wife, the Archdeacon said. Thank you, Holiness, the prince said, whirling toward Rugen. Stop that commotion, he commanded, and before his words were finished, the count was running for the chapel door. It was 5:31. Okay, this is the very end of the book, and it's on page 356. It says, and they lived happily ever after, my father said. Wow, I said. He looked at me. You're not pleased? No, it's just, it came so quick. The ending, it surprised me. I thought there'd be a little more is all. I mean, was the pirate ship waiting, or was that just a rumor, like it said? Complain to Mr. Morgenstern, and they lived happily ever after is how it ends. The truth was, my father was fibbing. I spent my whole life thinking it ended that way up until I did this abridgment. Then I glanced at the last page. This is how Morgenstern ends it. Buttercup looked at him. Oh, my Wesley. So do I. From behind them, suddenly, closer than they had imagined, they could hear the roar of Humperdinck. Stop them! Cut them off! They were admittedly startled, but there was no reason for worry. They were on the fastest horses in the kingdom, and the lead was already theirs. However, this was before Inigo's wound reopened, and Wesley relapsed again, and Fezzik took the wrong turn, and Buttercup's horse threw a shoe, and the night behind them was filled with the crescendoing sound of pursuit. That was Morgenstern's ending. A lady or the tiger type effect. This was before the lady or the tiger, remember? Now, he was a satirist, so he left it that way, and my father was, I guess I realized too late, a romantic, so he ended it another way. Well, I'm an abridger, so I'm entitled to a few ideas of my own. Did they make it? Was the pirate ship there? You can answer it for yourself, but for me, I say yes it was. And yes, they got away, and got their strength back, and had lots of adventures, and more than their share of laughs. But that doesn't mean I think they had a happy ending. Because in my opinion, anyway, they squabbled a lot, and Buttercup lost her looks eventually, and one day Fezzik lost a fight, and some hotshot kid whipped Inigo with the sword, and Wesley was never able to really sleep sound because of Humperdinck maybe being on the trail. I'm not trying to make this a downer, understand? I mean, I really do think that love is the best thing in the world, except for cough drops. But I also have to say for the umpty-umpth time that life isn't fair. It's just fairer than death. That's all. New York City, February of 1973. Okay, if that didn't convince you to read this book, I'm not sure what will, because it's hilarious. And if you've watched the movie and seen it's a novel and thought, dang, I should really read that, you really should, because it's so funny. I love this. My friend let me borrow this book, and I'm definitely buying it and going to read it on occasion because I loved it so much. And reading direct lines from the book that are in the movie was even more fun. And there's a whole plot twist I didn't even read anything from because I don't want to spoil it for you that's in the book that isn't in the movie. So, if you're a Princess Bride fan, you've seen the movie a bazillion times, and you want to read the book, do it. It's so funny. Happy reading!